Hi, everyone. Welcome to Abbey Research Reads. I am Dr. Kristen Donnelly, and today I'm talking about Phoebe Robinson's 2016 book, You Can't Touch My Hair. For anyone not familiar with Phoebe Robinson, she is a comedian, a writer, an actress, a whole lot of things. You may or may not know her from, she did both a podcast and an HBO series called Two Dope Queens with Jessica Williams. Jessica Williams used to be, and might still be, forgiveness, a correspondent on The Daily Show. And this book came out in October of 2016. So there's elements of it, I'll say right up front, that are a little bit time capsule-y, because anytime a book talks about pop culture or references current affairs becomes a bit of a time capsule. And this book is certainly that. It's a series of essays about Robinson's experiences as a woman, as a Black woman in particular in the United States. It's written largely to not Black women. There's a lot of insider, like, oh, if you're a Black woman reading this, you know this is true, but it's a whole lot of, she does a lot of emotional labor to kind of peel back the curtain of what it feels like to experience the world, and specifically the American world in the 21st century as a Black woman. And she goes off the premise of the fact that hair is so different. We've been talking about that a little bit so far in this beginning of 2020. And so we wanted to share with you a couple resources that have helped us as we have learned as very white women with very white hair, exactly the kind of some of the touchstones that hair symbolizes. First of all, it's a little bit trite, but if you have not encountered the documentary Good Hair by Chris Rock, we'll be talking about it as well in this time period. But it's also a really good primer. I believe it's still on Netflix, to understand the breadth of the Black hair industry in a lot of ways. Financially, he touches on some of the more emotional aspects of it, although Robinson does a better job. But the vast economy was something that when I first watched the documentary in 2009, I was completely unaware of, and it was fascinating to me. And it's something I've recommended to a lot of white folk ever since. Like, hey, there's this piece of our country that you know nothing about. This is a pretty good introduction. Robinson's book is fast-paced, full of references. I've heard her and been listening to her podcast for years, and so I will tell you she writes exactly as she talks, which is full of a lot of rapid fire references, and then all of a sudden in the middle of it, she will drop this really beautiful wisdom that just takes your breath away because it's so beautifully articulated, but it also comes out of nowhere a little bit. Like she's making jokes about Shonda Rhimes' shows, and then all of a sudden she's unpacking the beautiful aspects of Viola Davis's character on How to Get Away with Murder in a tonal shift that is both entirely effective and, until you get used to her writing, entirely surprising. I recommend this book wholeheartedly for people who are like me. I know that sounds kind of nuts, but if you enjoy a lot of pop culture references, if you consume comedy these days and kind of how comedy works, this book wouldn't be out of place in a 30 Rock writer's room, for instance. If you've ever listened to Two Dope Queens, you have to read this book. If you enjoy Phoebe Robinson or Jessica Williams's work at all, please do. This is also really good for people who like Issa Rae or people who like Lovey Ajayi. It's really, really great. And whereas like Lovey's work and a little bit of Issa's work is, especially in book form, is a little bit more self-reflective, what I appreciate so much about You Can't Touch My Hair is that Robinson is both entirely reflexive and also taking a lot of time to reflect on the culture. So for instance, I wanted to read you this one quote. I would be showing you the cover, but I've read it on my Kindle. So for instance, regarding Black hair specifically, she says, the amount of time, effort, and money that is spent on Black hair is not because of superficiality. It's because Black women know that the quality of their life, and how others will treat them is riding on the presentation of their hair. And if we're going to dabble in real talk, the simple truth that Black women sporting natural hair deal with more bullshit than Black women with straight hair or the adorable Julia Roberts curls of her ingenue years That's the simple truth. Women with natural hair, i.e. afros or you know, whatever you would call, like whatever in your brain, you would call that. But like a lot of my friends who are both African American and African and Afro-Caribbean and British, Black, like whatever gamut that they identify themselves as, if they have what is considered and what is, you know, what is Black hair, this is a conversation that I've had with a lot of them over the last couple years, in just some really simple questions. I have colleagues and friends who choose relaxer still, and who go to the salon every 6 weeks and spend 8 to 10 hours there and do that. I have other colleagues and friends that absolutely up and down will never ever go to the salon again and have embraced the natural hair kind of movement that they see happening. And I've got friends in the gamut. So it's a very specific thing, but realize that this is a truth. Black women who sport natural hair are treated differently than Black women who use relaxer or who put in weaves or who, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very real reality. So this isn't about vanity. This is about social presentation. This is a little bit similar in my mind to when I was a teenager and everybody told me to never get a tattoo because I'd never get a job. We understand that there are things about our bodies that shorthand to other people. Now, tattoo is a choice, obviously, but the Black hair is how Black women wear their hair is frequently a shorthand that's completely inappropriate, but a shorthand to how they're treated. About 2 paragraphs later, by the way, like she, you know, is talking a lot about Oprah and explaining Oprah and kind of the genesis of all of that and what she means. And then a couple paragraphs after that, she's talking about that incredible scene from the first season of How to Get Away with Murder that I already mentioned, where Viola Davis takes off her wig, which I, even as a very white girl, was completely, like, I remember pausing the TiVo when that happened and thinking, like, this is the very first time, as an avid TV watcher, this is the very first time in my life I've ever seen this level of vulnerability from a Black woman on screen. Black women are so often portrayed as really, really tough, and having a vulnerability that you would have in taking off your armor, which is what Annalise, Viola Davis's character's wig is. It was arresting, and she talks for a long time in this book about that. She doesn't just talk about hair. She talks about body image. She talks about casting in Hollywood. She talks about romantic stuff. I will say, she is very, very real and very, very raw. My mother would say a lot of this language is crass. I don't think it is, but it may be for you. So mileage may vary into how much you enjoy her patter and her writing style. I think the truths that she tells are incredibly imperative. And if you are somebody who wants to interact with the world and wants to exist within the world, and you are not somebody who owns or inhabits a black hair, then I really would recommend giving this one a go. We're going to be talking more about, specifically a little bit about hair, but hair as a arbiter of identity in a certain way over the next couple weeks. So if you've read some other really great books around this topic, we're specifically going to be focusing on words by people of color and specifically women of color in the next couple weeks. So if you've got great resources on that, we would really, really love to hear them. In the meantime, I'm Dr. Kristen Donnelly for Abbey Research Reads, and we will see you next time.